Two men walking along the Columbia River near Kennewick, Washington, came across what they assumed was an ordinary rock. But upon further inspection, they discovered it was a human skull. At first, the men figured the skull was from a recent death. Little did they know, they had stumbled upon a 9,000-year-old skeleton, later dubbed Kennewick Man, one of the earliest Americans. The discovery incurred an extensive debate between the scientists who wanted to study Kennewick Man and the Native Americans who claimed Kennewick Man as an ancestor and wanted to give his remains a proper burial. If you were investigating the controversy of Kennewick Man, what criteria would you use to recognize bias in articles and stories you might find on the internet? A biased article may omit or skew important information to convince the reader to see an issue in a specific light. This could come in the form of propaganda, which is skewed information put out by an organization, or as an individual writer's personal opinion. If there are multiple sides to a story, check to see if an equal amount of time was devoted to each viewpoint. Also, be wary of the editorializing of quotations. Think about whether the article has accurately quoted all the people interviewed. Are their quotes used fairly? Are they used in context? Or do they make one side look wrong or foolish? Finally, think about the intended audience. Some articles may be skewed based on the audience or the publication for which they were written. Ultimately, you should look for solid facts and third-party opinions that appear in the article, freeing you to make your own judgments. As you watch this segment, think about the techniques you might use to determine the bias of an article about Kennewick Man. After the initial discovery of Kennewick Man's skull, most of the skeleton was found in the water. Scientists began to study the remains. Upon close inspection, forensic anthropologist James Chatters concluded that the skull was not Native American.
Very long, narrow brain case, fairly distinct brow, and a nose that just jumps off his face. Very pronounced nose. These are all characteristics more often seen on Western Eurasian skeletons, European skeletons.
Chatters also found an ancient spearhead embedded in Kennewick Man's pelvis.
Sharp, clear, serrated or saw-toothed edge is characteristic of what we call a cascade point, which is a style that was most commonly used between 5,000 and 9,000 years ago.
Further analysis of the bones using carbon-14 dating led scientists to determine that Kennewick Man lived before 7,000 BC, one of the oldest skulls ever found in this area. The scientists were baffled. They long thought that only Native Americans lived in this area during the year 7000 BC. But the discovery of Kennewick Man challenged this long-standing scientific theory. However, before any more tests could be conducted, the government confiscated the skeleton. Under current law, Native American tribes can claim any skeleton over 500 years old as their ancestor. And 5 different tribes all claimed Kennewick Man as their own. Though the skull appeared to be European, 9,000 years of evolution could have transformed Kennewick Man's descendants into today's Native Americans.
Under the federal law, if it's Native American, then we go into repatriation with our kind of responsibility that they have to make sure that this individual is laid to rest and can make his journey back to his reward. That's what the Indian people are interested in.
What's going to happen to the skeleton if it's turned over to the tribes? It'll go in the ground. It'll go in the ground it didn't come out of. What that means very quickly is it will deteriorate and it will disappear. What happens in the next generation when 15 or 20 new methods come up that allow us to ask additional questions? We won't have that material then.
This was the beginning of an ongoing and heated battle. The tribes wanted to invoke their legal and religious rights to bury Kennewick men, and the scientists wanted to study this important link in American history. Now that you know a bit about the Kennewick Man controversy, what criteria would you use to recognize bias in articles about him on the internet? When studying controversial issues, it's important to realize that an article may omit or skew important information. Be aware of propaganda or faulty reasoning. You should determine whether the writer's opinions are evident in the article and whether the author has taken sides. That said, some articles will include multiple sides to the story. Equal time should be devoted to each side of the story to prevent it from seeming one-sided. For example, an article focusing more on the scientists' reasons for wanting to study Kennewick Man might create a bias that could cause you to take the scientist's side. Also be wary of the editorializing of quotations. People interviewed should be accurately quoted. Are their quotes used fairly, or is bias being infused by purposely using quotes to paint a negative picture of one of the opposing sides? Keep in mind that bias can be detected when you look at the intended audience of an article. If you are reading the article on a scientific journal's website, the reporter would likely focus more on the importance of a scientific discovery than on Native American burial rites. Conversely, a Native American website might minimize the scientific implications of Kennewick Man. In both of these instances, the writer's bias would be evident. The ultimate goal is to find sources that are accurate, unbiased, and impartial to help you determine the facts and enable you to make your own judgments. Next time you read an internet article, think about the techniques the writer used to create an accurate and unbiased story.